The truth is, I first started thinking about it after the news about Donald Trump possibly being photographed with prostitutes in Moscow. And I was very interested if this compromat really existed. So I started to research about sexpionage, sexspion, whether it's true, whether it's just a legend. I quickly realized that it's real, and they have even institutes where they train spies to use sex to compromise diplomats, businessmen, and that it's been going on for many, many years, and it's a big program. And America has a program, and to me, the original idea was, wow, I want to know, is this true? Does Trump, is there some compromising photographs? Then I realized very quickly two things. First, it would be suicide to make a film about that topic, because if I was lucky to find some evidence, I think I might not be able to live to finish the post-production. Secondly, I realized that the real story about how this program was born in the 1960s was even more interesting than the contemporary use. And as I was researching sexspionage, sexspioning, I learned a lot of things I never knew before. For instance, I learned that in Soviet Union, for the first 10 years, homosexuality was legal. And gay people lived together and even made marriage contracts.
Really?
100 years before gay marriage in America. I learned about crazy people like Alexandra Kollontai that dreamt of sexual utopia. I learned that the senior communist officials, while pornography was illegal, they made special pornography for themselves. So I started learning about so many interesting areas about sex, and not only sex. The film is really an exploration of how totalitarianism destroys not only economies and polities, but it also destroys the soul. And it destroys the most intimate parts of the human soul, and that's sexuality. So first I started to move in that direction because it's more safe to make a documentary about the past. So everyone is already dead, so I won't make any enemies. And it's actually more interesting, and it's a topic. So I first started to research other documentaries. I thought there would be 10, 20 documentaries about sex in the Soviet Union. But they don't exist. So I thought, oh my God, I'll make a movie about it. It's so interesting. Let's do it. Also, I have some time between shooting for my next film. I thought it would be a very small project. It's become a little bit bigger, but I discovered a lot of fascinating people. The first sexologist in the Soviet Union was Ukrainian. He lived in Vinnytsia. He wrote amazing memoirs. And so I think the film will be important because it will show something that people in the West don't know, and maybe even people in Ukraine and Russia don't know the real history.
Are you preparing to be accused of something that, or you say something wrong about the Ukrainian or Soviet Union history? But because every time people try to do that, some accusation of author of documentary.
If I am successful, the Russian trolls will definitely criticize me. I hope they do. That's my goal. That's how you know you're making great films, if the Russians are angry. But seriously, I think I don't want to show only the negative. Of course, we will talk about Beria and how he raped and murdered girls using the Communist Party as his shield. And not only Beria, but hundreds of other senior party officials in Ukraine also. They were able to molest, rape, and commit amazing, horrible crimes, but they weren't judged. They were released. because of their connections and their party affiliation. So of course there will be a lot of grusna и tragic scenes, but we're also interviewing ordinary people, babushkas and dedushkas, and they're just telling normal stories, simple problems that people had, simple challenges, you know, something like living in a komunalka without any privacy. How did people even find time to have sex, or the ability? So we read lots of interesting memoirs. Sometimes they would go to the amusement park and wait until the kalyaso goes to the very top and have sex at the top, and then come down. So it's also, I want to show the good and the bad, the sad and the humorous, the tragic and the comic.
Why are you sure that these old people say truth? Because some of them could told something not really, or is it not purpose of this documentary to see documentary realism?
People always lie
Yeah.
when they're talking, and especially about sex and love. So I'm sure we will do some interviews. We didn't begin yet. I'm sure we will have some dedushkas exaggerating how many lovers they had. Of course, I can't check, but all of the information. So in the part of our film where we show historical figures like Alexandra Kalantai, Beria, we found a long letter from a gay man living in Petrograd in 1920s, and it's real. And he tells the story of his life, and he lives with his husband. So it's based on, all of this information is based on primary sources, original materials, police reports, diaries, memoirs, letters. And in the film, everything will be documented. There will be a website that accompanies the film, where everyone can go and see, is this true? Was there really a gay couple? Yes, here's their names, here's the link to the trial, because unfortunately, when Stalin came, all of the homosexuals were arrested and sent to Gulag. And then some other things that we add, maybe for dramatic effect. We don't know exactly what Kalantai said to her husband when she left him with their little baby. But she left to fight for sexual utopia. So we don't know what she said, but we imagine it and we reconstruct it. And on the website we will put the facts and what we imagine. And if we think someone is exaggerating or is lying, we will also put that on the website. We'll say, probably he only had 2 lovers, but he said 6. So that's a little bit of a lie or exaggeration. My goal is to tell the deeper truth about, it's not even a film necessarily about sex. It's a film about totalitarianism and how it perverts the soul and how it warps people's relationships with each other and even their most intimate relationships. So there's no sex in the film, unfortunately. People, might be disappointed that it will be, it's a story of human nature, human soul, and how.
It's not pornography.
No. It's. I hope that it will be important. Historically, we found a lot of information that is not widely known. I hope it will be interesting, and I hope it will be beautiful. And I'm trying to make something that's, a memorable portrait of something people don't know very much about.
Do you think that not participation, exception of people from post-Soviet Union and from foreign people, from the USA, from the EU, will be different?
You mean the response to the film?
A response, yeah.
I don't know. You know, my last film, I thought, Ruski Dyatel, I thought in Russia, Ukraine, people will be like, ah, we already know everything about Chernobyl, this is a crazy artist. And then in America, it would be a different response. Actually, I found this response to be pretty similar. I think if you make some of the facts, Ukrainians will know. Most Americans never heard of Kalantai, Beria, these people. The average American hasn't heard of them. Maybe the average American doesn't know that condoms were almost impossible to find in 50s and 60s, and that birth control pills were almost didn't exist. In America in the 70s, birth control pills were widely used. Maybe Americans don't know that the Soviet Union had the highest abortion rate in the world. And not only the highest abortion rate, but the highest death rate from abortions. 2,026 deaths per 100,000 abortions. It's a little more than 2% from 50s to the 60s, compared to, in America, around 20 per 100,000. So there are some facts. Maybe Russians, Ukrainians, we already know this sad history. But I'm not trying to make an educational film about facts. I want to make a film that will touch people's hearts, and I hope that it touches people here in Ukraine, the same as in Japan, New Zealand, and Chicago. We're trying to make a universal film.
You want to involve some famous Ukrainian actors or not?
For me, the most important thing is to find actors who share the same style that I want to present, which is a very naturalistic acting style, not theatrical, not TV series style, but very low-key, very relaxed, and supernatural. Not supernatural, but very natural. So to me, it's not important if they're famous, because our market is China, America, Europe, and Australia, New Zealand. And there are even the most famous actor in Ukraine is not famous in America. So for me, it's not important. We're looking for people in cafes. We're looking for people on Instagram. We're looking for people on Facebook. We're looking for friends of friends. And we're also working with a great casting director who has professional actors as well. So for Ukrainian, there might be some familiar faces, or it might be all just ordinary people who have talent.
Very satisfied of this part of casting of professional actors, not for all people, but professional Ukrainian actors, because we have different actors school in the USA.
I'm very surprised. I thought, when I watch Ukrainian TV, I see a totally different style of acting from what I want to, the kind of cinema that I want to create. And this is my first film that's well, it's documentary, but it's reenactment, so it's more like cinema. There are actual scenes, and even though it's based on memoirs, we're recreating them. So for me, it's new, and I need to find actors that can work in the style I want. I didn't think they would be here, frankly, because from what I see on television, it's not the style that I want. But we found already 75% of our cast, they're absolutely amazing, absolutely spectacular. And they would thrive in Europe, New York, LA. I hope that this film actually brings them to a bigger audience, because the quality is perfect. It's much more than I expected. Of course, it's difficult. We're still looking for 1 or 2 roles, and it's always, work, and you have to wait until the magic moment, until you find just the right person. But I'm optimistic. Originally, I was thinking maybe I'll have to bring we have Ukrainian actors in New York and LA. I was thinking maybe it's cheaper and easier to fly them here to film. But in the end, I thought, no, I want this to be all Ukrainian. I want all of the money that we spend to go into Ukraine, and I want to support people working in Ukrainian film here. So, so far it's worked. I think we're going to have an amazing cast. I think it's going to be really, really surprising how great the actors will be.
What was not good with television actors? It was something not stylish, not professional.
Well, no, I come from theater background, so I understand that in theater everything must be very large. All of the gestures and the tears and everything must be melodrama, in order for the people in the back row to see, right? So I understand that, and I understand that the history here, the education here, is mostly coming from a theatrical style. And people are accustomed to that style. But in America, it's considered too much. So we are looking for a more, I don't know how to explain it, but I think when you see it, we're looking for actors that aren't acting. Do you know what I mean? It looks like it's just verite. But they're here. They're here. I saw yesterday we had casting for 10 hours. We saw half a dozen people that were absolutely convincing. That they weren't acting. They were just having a conversation.
Okay, the other part of our interview, something about your story and how changed your life after you got prize of Sundance. Do you feel jealous of your colleagues? How it changed your life?
It changed my life mainly in that it gave me the confidence to continue to make films, because I didn't know I didn't know that I could do it. But after Sundance, I feel like, okay, I didn't know if my experience in theater, where I worked for 20 years, would be helpful in film. Now I think maybe it's helpful. And also it helps me because producers will read my emails. Before, nobody would read my emails. And now, at least I can have someone read the first few sentences of my email. And that changes everything, because if you can at least get a conversation started about a new project, and if you have a good project, then everything else comes from that. Otherwise, Sundance changed my life because I was able to travel the world. I went to 42 film festivals. I met actors, directors, producers. I met people all over the world that are in love with documentary. So I have a whole new family, a whole new community of people. And it also gave me the idea and the resources to really focus and establish a base in Ukraine. Officially, my base is wherever my laptop is. I don't have an office. I do my editing. I edited everything on the laptop. I do everything through my Facebook page. So my base could be anywhere. But my heart really is in Kiev. And I think that both for artistic reasons and financial reasons, it's the best place for me right now to do films.
Mm-hmm. And what about producing, supporting of documentaries? Producer is has a main role in documentaries or not? Are you a producer of your films? Because we have a lot of stories that some people say that some producers steal their material and then they do film and sold it to Netflix and others. Some scandals about that. What do you think about the producer role of documentaries?
I mean, look, my projects are so small that I'm the producer and the director and the editor, and you know, I'm also the person who's going out there putting the posters on the walls before we screen the movie. So I don't have the luxury of having a producer. What is a producer? A producer is a person who brings you a briefcase full of cash, right? I don't know where these people exist. If somebody came to me and said, I want to be your producer, here's $1 million, I would say, oh, wonderful, let's go. But for this film, it's just, we don't have a producer. I'm the producer. I have a co-producer, Marina Orechova, who's doing all the organizing and etc. But the money, like Woodpecker, is coming from my credit cards and my hopes that we will make something beautiful and we will sell it. I mean, to the bigger question, of course, you know, ideally, and when you're a professional, the director should focus on artistic questions and the producer should focus on everything else. I don't mind being producer. Actually, nobody knows my vision as well as I do. No one really could explain why I want to make this film. No one could do pitching except for me. I don't know how it would work otherwise. Even if I hired someone to write an application for a grant, usually unless it's a stupid movie, the director is the only person who can explain the project really well. Do you know what I mean? It also changes.
So you write your application yourself, or
yeah, for Woodpecker, but we didn't have any. Nobody gave us any money. They said, this is who is this guy? Chad? He's making a film about a naked Ukrainian artist who's looking for a Chernobyl. What? This is idiotic. Nobody gave us any money, except we did get a little bit of money from, which I have to say, from New York State Council on the Arts. They took a big risk. They gave us $20,000, which we desperately needed for post-production. And we found the Angel Roast Beef Productions that came in just before Sundance, and after we already had a rough cut, and gave us the funding that we needed to do color correction, sound, composer, all post-production. And that was without that we would never have had a film. But when I first had the idea, nobody would listen to me. And Sex in the Soviet Union, it's very small. It's like a micro budget. So by the time it takes me to write an application for a grant, it's better for me to get a job at Starbucks and just earn the money and spend it on the film. It's a small production.
We have a discussion with our cinema government person who say that documentaries, authors of documentaries, they do their work for very small number of people and for festivals, so it's not for a big audience. What do you say to him? Because I don't agree with that.
I mean, well, what's your question exactly?
The
motivation or the reality?
The documentary is not understanding, but plenty of people.
Well, first of all, right now we're living in a golden age of documentary. If you go anywhere in America to any normal city, I would say almost everyone has seen like the top 10 documentaries of the last 10 years. Maybe not everyone. Of course, Star Wars and Harry Potter will never compete with those. But, you know, if you're talking about Jiro Dreams of Sushi, or Man on Wire, or 20 Feet from Stardom, or Citizen 4. These are Oscar-winning winning films. But Winter on Fire, I think you will find millions of people saw these. And many of them, you know, they might not make a lot of money, but people love documentaries. There are lots of Americans, I can't speak about anyone else, I only know Americans, who only watch documentaries. They sit on Netflix and just watch. My brother, I don't think he saw a regular movie in 15 years. He just watches every single documentary. So, March of the Penguins, come on, everyone in the world saw that documentary. So I don't agree. I think right now, maybe 20 years ago, people thought documentary, they fall asleep. Now, people are watching documentaries, and Netflix and Amazon, they're paying money for them. Of course, the more esoteric, you know, the more, look, if I make a documentary about my grandma and her mushroom collection, okay, that's not for everyone. But if you make a documentary about an important topic, yeah, I think you can find a big audience. Well, what does it matter anyway? If the people who, the real question is, do the people who need and want to experience your film, do they see it? And 20 years ago, how do you find, how would you find a film? You had to wait till it's in the movie theater, or 25 years ago, right? And they didn't show documentaries in movie theaters. Maybe you had a VHS tape 20 years ago. Now, anybody in the world who's interested in Chernobyl can go on their iPhone and they can watch Russian Woodpecker. That's amazing. And so really, to me, it's not a question of how many people see your film. It's a question of, can those people that are interested find it and see it? Someone in China, in the countryside, may be interested in sex in the Soviet Union, or they might be interested in my grandma's mushroom picking, and they'll find the film and they'll see it. That's amazing to me. If you make, if you want films that everyone sees, make pornography. Millions of people will watch a pornography film on the web. If your goal is just eyeballs, but if your goal is to connect with someone who's simpatico and shares your dreams or your visions or your interests, then today is the best time ever to be. It's a miracle, really, to be able to make a documentary and have the whole world see it.
Your words inspired me. But how many people should watch documentaries that in the USA producers say, okay, it was successful distribution?
Well, for a producer, a successful distribution is when they make $1 profit, which almost never happens. I was at a film festival couple months ago, and a very, very popular documentary from last year was being shown. And it was a documentary, I think it was nominated for, I don't know if it was nominated for an Oscar, but maybe it was nominated for, anyway, it was like very, very popular. Everyone was jealous because it was beautiful and extraordinary. And I saw the Q&A, and someone in the audience said, "How much money did you make?" It's the same question you always get. And she said, "Well, I'm not supposed to tell you, but I'll tell you. It cost $1 million to make, and we had the best response and a wonderful sales, and so far we sold $750,000. Mm-hmm. So even
unprofitable.
Even the most successful and artistic and perfect films, documentaries, if they make zero, everyone has a big party and there's champagne, cheap champagne. But those same people, they're making another one because they're not doing it for money. I have a friend his name is Ram Devanini. He makes documentaries for microscopic budgets. Microscopic. I don't know how he does it. He's his own cameraman. He has a camera. He shoots everything. He edits everything. He does narration. He does color correction on his laptop, and he he sells his films and he makes money on them, but it's because he spends $10,000, $20,000 to make a feature film. I think people, if I have any advice to people, you know, young people, make a film for $5,000 and maybe you'll only lose $1,000. You know, of course it depends on your topic, but there's no market for even the most, you know, I'm talking with my distributor all the time about this. Even if you have the best idea and the best access and everything is perfect, really realistic success would be selling it for $500,000. So if your budget is $1 million and the maximum you can earn, maximum, if you win Sundance and you get Sony as a distributor, is $500,000, then you have a problem. Of course, there's always exceptions, and there are documentary companies that can make a $2 million doc and sell for $3-4 million, of course. But I'm talking about people like me who choose crazy topics that that might be artistic and interesting, but they're not blockbusters.
Okay, but we like it.
I'm glad you liked it. I have a day job, so I don't have to worry. I don't do it for money.
Okay, and for the end, some words about your feelings, your how Ukraine and Ukrainian people change after the revolution. What do you think about that?
I think, you know, I almost didn't notice it because I was here through the whole thing, but now when I look back to how people were before the revolution, I see a huge difference now. My friend came and wrote an article for The Guardian, I believe, and he said, the political goals of the revolution may have failed, but somehow it sparked in the new generation so much confidence and energy and creativity and enthusiasm and independence to try new things, to build new things. I feel like it reminds me of when I lived in New York City in the early 1990s, where everywhere there was a new theater, there was a new gallery, there was a new cafe, a new restaurant. It's like a garden. It's like after a rainstorm, and all the flowers are popping up. To me, it feels like it's overwhelming almost, and I'm a little bit sad because I have some nostalgia for Soviet Union, a little bit.
Oh.
I know. It's because I grew up during Cold War. Whenever there's like a really mean babushka who yells at me for I don't know for what, I love that, and they're disappearing now. It's good for Ukraine, of course. Yeah, Ukraine is becoming. I think it's like a creative engine. It's maybe like Berlin. People were saying in the 2000s. Obviously, it's like a mini Berlin or a mini New York. But look, I put a post on Facebook for actors or for production assistant, and in a day or two, I have 500 people in Kiev who have great ideas, who are ready to work, who are saying, "It's my dream. I can do sound. I can do cameras." I mean, people they don't want to sit around. And I don't know, but it seems like there's a whole new generation. It's a whole new way of looking at life. Everyone I know, everyone is doing something cool. I don't know any Ukrainians that aren't doing some cool project. Now I have an idea to do a little tiny summer festival somewhere outside of the country, in the countryside in Kiev Oblast, and with some friends, gather people from America and from around the world to come to see Ukrainian cinema, and also Ukrainian art, Ukrainian fashion designers, Ukrainian everything, and spend a week, and also some hiking and some kayaking. And then I noticed there's like 5 other groups that are doing the same thing. I can't remember the name, but there's Kino Serai, like a film in a barn, and there's another group that's doing something with local food. It's like everywhere you look, there's some crazy Don Quixote dreamer in Ukraine. I think Ukraine's becoming a country of Don Quixotes, and that's wonderful. Don Quixote is my hero, and I don't know if you have a Quixote version in your history, but that's how it seems to me. And those quixotic, as we say in English, those quixotic people, they are the ones that make a country beautiful and livable and special.